I think it's inevitable that the obvious loser, and I won't get much praise from number 10 for saying this, is unfortunately Rishi Sunak. I think in whichever way you want to look at this objectively, he has had a bad year. I mean, it's his first full year in office.
Potentially his only full year in office.
Potentially his only full, and I'm sure we'll go on to talk about that more, but you just have to look at how he has performed this year. The Conservatives started the year behind Labour in the polls. He came out and wanted to shift the dial to start a comeback, and yet for hundreds of polls now, the Conservative Party remain about 20 points behind. And what's more concerning is that one of the great strengths that his Team 40 had was his ability to get things done, to deliver. And yet, if you look at the personal approval ratings for the Prime Minister, he is now at his lowest point. You know, that he's got pretty dire approval ratings.
He's got negative approval ratings.
Negative approval ratings. And they are pretty low. They're kind of at the kind of Boris level at his nadir. So, you know, heading into 2024, a general election year, I think the Prime Minister has an almighty job to do to turn things around. And this year, that hasn't been demonstrated.
Yeah. What have we learnt from Rishi's first full year in office? And what do you think he's learnt?
Well, I think if we cast our minds back to January, the Prime Minister set these big 5 pledges. And he said, these are the things that you as an electorate should judge me on. And now we end the year, he has only delivered on one of those pledges, which is to halve inflation. I don't want to be unfair and I want to be objective here, but the inflation target was largely out of his control. A large part of the inflation reduction we've seen is due to global factors such as oil prices coming down. And then on all the other metrics, he is currently way off target. And so what have we learned about Rishi Sunak? I think Rishi Sunak prided himself when he came into office on being a man who could deliver. You had a 2-year period before that where Boris Johnson, who was a master at rhetoric and winning over crowds, would make all these fantastical promises and a lot of them weren't delivered. And he came into office saying, I will get on with the job. I will bring stability to governance and I will deliver. And unfortunately, I don't think he's done so. And in doing, and he has had some successes. He delivered the Windsor Framework back in February, which was the big Brexit deal that not many people thought he could deliver. But beyond that, there are some key gaps in his record. And of course, the Rwanda immigration policy, that is now on life support and it's very unclear where we go. So,
unmitigated disaster, some might say.
Some may say that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's wait and see what happens in the new year. But I think what he will take maybe from this is that it's all well and good having that technocratic ability. And he does. He's a very good micromanager. But you have to balance that to be a prime minister, to be a successful prime minister. You have to have almost the flamboyance and the charisma, and which seeps through to the public, and the public see you as a leader. And I think that, unfortunately for Rishi Sunak, has not been on display, and that is possibly feeding into his approval ratings right now.
That leads me very nicely onto the one thing he has delivered, which is this slightly bonkers Christmas video, which, depending on your point of view, is either a brilliant masterstroke or just a really craven attempt to try to position the Prime Minister as a bit playful. I have to say, I found myself slightly charmed by it and quite tickled.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the Harry who was referring to was not me.
How
it was
do we
the
know?
other Harry. And I'll let your listeners guess who that is. But it was an interesting one. He got a lot of flack for it on social media, and a lot of people were saying, this is terrible PR, who told him to do that. But sometimes I just think with politics, we have a habit of maybe over-analysing everything. It was quite a festive, funny video, and it was paying homage to 2 of the most famous Christmas films, which was Home Alone and also Love Actually, when Hugh Grant, who was the fake prime minister in that film, was dancing around number 10 on his own. So look, if you want to be critical, you could ask the question, who does this actually appeal to? And I have spoken to a few people in Tory circles over the last couple of days who've raised this video. And a few of them said, well, the problem is this video is trying to convey, what his team are trying to convey to the public is that he's a really hard-working prime minister. He gets his head down when everybody else has gone home. But that's fine, but they've been selling that message for months on end, and it doesn't really appeal to the demographics that Rishi Sunak hasn't won over yet and really needs to. So, yeah, I think we should be best to treat it as a funny, festive message and no more.
Yeah, a little cockle warmer. Now, yesterday we found out there's going to be a March budget. Does that mean we're looking at a May election?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
But it does make the option for a snap May election more likely. So the reality is that we always have a spring budget in March. But actually, this year, Jeremy Hunt was looking at holding an earlier one, even earlier than March 6th. He had actually talked to Number 10 about potentially holding one in early February. So that's obviously got a lot of people excited in Westminster, because they ask, well, there must be only one reason why he's doing this, which is so that he can set up the ground perfectly for an election. All I would say for balance is that the Tories over the last couple of years, they've held a number of fiscal events where they have brought forward tax changes earlier. And it just seems to play a bit better with the public, thinking that they're going to get an immediate tax cut than something that's a little bit further down the line, because tax cuts normally come in April. And so some people in the Treasury have said to me in the last few days, look, the reason why we're having one on March the 6th is it just gives us that much more time for HMRC to make those tax changes so that they're implemented
so we feel
in
it.
April. Yeah, and there definitely will be tax cuts coming.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.